Hi beekeepers, Jenna here from Mann Lake. I'd like to walk you through winter prep for your hive. So we're here today in the Minnesota bee yard. It is November and it's time for us to do the final preparations for the winter months. So there's a few things that you should have done pretty early on in the season, so late summer, early fall. First being, make sure that you check and treat for mites. You want to make sure that your colony has low mite levels going into the winter months. Varroa mites can really weaken the colony, so making sure that you take care of that problem early on is really key in a successful overwintering. Secondly, you want to make sure that your hive has enough food stores. So you're going to, in the early fall, offer a Pro Sweet or 2-to-1 sugar syrup, as well as a pollen substitute. I prefer the Ultra Bee with the rocket fuel. Then make sure you've got a mouse guard on your hive. I recommend putting them on early. That way, as the temperatures, especially at night, start to cool off, you don't have to worry about those pests coming into the hive. Mice are looking for a nice warm place that has a lot of food, and there is no better definition for that than a beehive. So you're gonna check and treat for mites, feed your bees, make sure they have plenty of food stores, and make sure your mouse guard is on early. Then once your daytime highs get down to around the 45-degree mark, that's when you're gonna do your final steps. So we're gonna take that sugar syrup off, replace it with Hive Alive fondant patty or a Pro Winter patty. We're going to do a mix of both in our apiary here this year. Then insulate, and finally, and the most important, is make sure that you are controlling moisture in your hive. Moisture can be a really big problem when you're trying to overwinter, especially if you're in an area that is a bit humid or gets a lot of snowfall and moisture during the winter months. So I'm going to walk you through on this hive here today all of those steps. Now it is pretty cool, but I am still wearing a veil because sometimes when you pull your cover off, you will have a couple bees fly out. So always make sure that you are taking the proper precautions when you are out in your hive. So first thing I'm going to do here is put on my winter wrap. Now here in Minnesota, we get extended periods of 0 or below 0 temperatures, so I do prefer to use a bee cozy because I can put it on and leave it on for the duration. If you are in a further south region, you may want to consider using an easy on hive cover because you can take it off if you have a bit warmer spell. So it's really key that you don't put this on too early because 45 degrees is about the max that you want to have this on your hive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just slide it on the hive. So I've already taken my cover off. I leave the inner cover on just to try to keep the bees in because it is a bit cooler, and seam to the front. So you're just going to slide it over your brood boxes and then pull it almost all the way to the bottom. You want to make sure that the entrance is still open. And the reason is when you do get those warmer days during the winter months, your bees will do what is called a cleansing flight, and they will need to get out. And I like to leave the seam to the front because it does help with airflow through here. And then from here, I'm going to take my inner cover off. And I'm going to put in place my winter feed. So I've got the Hive Alive fondant patty. I'm going to do some of the Pro Winter patties in this apiary as well. So I've cut a hole in the packaging. You just place that down. And then lastly, and most importantly, we want to make sure that we're controlling moisture. Quilt boxes have a notch. You also want to make sure this is placed towards the front of the hive. Line it up with your entrance. All right, and once that is in place, I'm going to fill the area above the screen with something that's going to absorb moisture. So what's happening in your colony in the winter months is your bees are in a cluster, and that cluster is generating heat to stay warm, to be able to move throughout the colony where there's additional stores. And so that heat can rise and condense, and that's where you end up with moisture issues. So by adding something that's absorbent into the quilt box, should hopefully take care of that problem for you. So I'm just putting my burlap in here, putting probably about 1.5 pounds. And the best part about using burlap is that you can dry this out in the spring and reuse it, whether you reuse it in your quilt box again, or you can also use it for smoker fuel. All right, from there, you can either take your inner cover and place it back on top of the hive, or you can put it in storage for the year. And then most importantly, make sure that you put your outer cover or your telescoping cover back on the hive. All right, so once we've done these final steps, so insulating the hive to make sure that we're keeping the cold out and the warm in, adding the extra supplemental winter feed, and controlling moisture, you've greatly increased the chance that your colony is going to survive the winter. Nothing is a guarantee, but this is really going to increase their chances of survival. And like I said, make sure that you are coming out and keeping your entrance clear during the winter months. Don't open the colony unless it gets back up above that 45-degree mark, but you can take a stethoscope, listen to the side of the hive, or even just knock on the side and you can hear the bees buzzing inside. So you know that they're in there and they're warm, and that way towards the end of winter, when you can actually open up the colony, hopefully you'll have one that's ready to go for spring.